Welcome back to Jersey Matters. I'm Larry Menti. It is a common story in New Jersey. Money that's supposed to go for one thing is poached and goes somewhere else. In this case, the money that's poached was earmarked to keep you safe. To explain and here to talk about it is New Jersey Wireless Association Vice President Dominic Villecco. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you, Larry.
Let's talk first about what NextGen911 is. That's where the money that I'm talking about is supposed to go.
Correct. Next Generation 911, also known as NextGen911, is a new system based upon Internet protocol. It's being developed and deployed around the United States. And what it does is it gives the callers the ability to send text, voice, video, pictures to a 911 dispatcher, and then subsequently that information could get forwarded on to the first responder as well, so that they could help the person that's calling.
Incredibly important, because
Absolutely.
if you had an active shooter, God forbid, in a mall or in a business, and we've had this, they, instead of having to call, they could just send a picture, they could give their location, they could text. So this is all important. They could do it to 911.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, if you think about it, you see in the subways, you see signs all over. It says, if you see something, say something. But what if you're in a location where you can't actually say something? You're not going to pick up the phone and dial 911 and say, hey, I'm standing next to this guy. Instead, you could text, you could send a picture, and you could say, I think there's a problem here, and send that information to the dispatchers, who could then get it to the first responders and help you.
Yeah, there's so many examples. I don't think anybody would be against this. It seems like a brilliant idea. So brilliant that the federal government decided we got to tax wireless use, and we will earmark that money specifically for NextGen911. And in New Jersey, somehow that money didn't make it to where it was supposed to go. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Right?
That's correct. Yes. What happened was in 2008, the Congress enacted the Net 911 Act of 2008, and then there they talk about Next Generation 911. They were thinking ahead, so they enacted this bill. It's law, but New Jersey's legislation was enacted in 2004. Prior to that, now it reads reasonably close to it, but what New Jersey has chosen to do over the last 10 years is send this money to other things that they refer to as 911 related.
Now, I know that the answer is, well, it's New Jersey. Well, but there's got to be a
yes.
deeper answer than that. How does this happen?
New Jersey has filed year after year and said we don't use this for eligible 911 expenses. So it's the New Jersey filings with the FCC that say it's not being used properly. Now,
how do they get away with that?
Well, it's interesting because we've spoken to people in the Assembly, people in the Senate, in the state here, trying to push this issue and trying to get some awareness of the issue. One, I think it's been happening so long, a lot of the people that we've spoken to don't even know what's happening. That's one thing. There was a report by the FCC's own task force that said that this has happened so often in so many places, not just New Jersey, but in so many places, it's gained incredible momentum and inertia, and it just happens at that point.
How much money are we talking about?
$120 million a year. So it's been, since the state started collecting the money, it's been over $1.25 billion.
Is there some wiggle room somehow in the legislation?
I don't believe there's any wiggle room in the federal legislation. I believe that the way that the state legislation is written is that it's fairly clear and it's supposed to go to the right thing. But when we've had conversations with people in Trenton, I've heard things like, well, you know, we don't have any money to pay these bills. And I've heard, well, we can't just pull money from there to put it here. And even the one thing that I heard that was very surprising, and I spoke to one of the chiefs of staff, I don't remember which legislator it was, but they said, you know, maybe we need a constitutional amendment. And I said, you have to explain that one to me. I don't understand the...
A referendum for a constitutional amendment?
Right, and I said, so what would be the purpose of the constitutional amendment? And they said, well, what the constitutional amendment would do is it would guarantee that those monies are specifically dedicated to that. So my response to that was, so let me get this straight. What we need is we need a law to tell us to obey the law. Is that correct?
Because usually the federal law takes precedence over state law.
It's supposed to.
Why doesn't this go to court so they can decide it once and for all?
I don't know. That's a good question. We've been pushing this for the last 5 years. What's happened is with this show, with some recent articles, John Oliver had something on HBO, we finally start to get some traction. It's happening in other states as well. And I think what's happening is there's Next Generation 911. It's an expensive proposition. These systems.
But the money was put aside for that, it sounds
If
like.
the money was put aside and if the money was sent to these dispatch centers, and these dispatch centers could have had this money and used it all along, they could have planned for it, they could be implementing it right now. New Jersey used to be, here's the worst part about it, New Jersey actually used to be a leader in 911. Way back when the legislation was started, when the monies were collected, and I was in the cellular industry back then, and in the mid-'80s, we had these cell phones, and we said, all right, well, what happens when someone dials 911? We met with the state police, a plan was put in place, and it's expanded ever since.
And now here we are.
And now here we are.
falling behind.
Right, exactly.
Sir,
falling
thank
behind.
you so much. We'll keep following the story, and please come back. New Jersey Wireless Association Vice President Dominic Villecco. That wraps up Jersey Matters for this week. I'm Larry Menti. Stick around now for another thing.